I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I've spent most of my life avoiding my older sister, who's 33. Growing up, it felt like she had some kind of magical power over our family. She could do no wrong, and I was always the one to blame, no matter what happened. If something broke, it was my fault. If she was upset, it was because of me. Even when it was clear she was lying, my parents would take her side. She was the golden child, and I was the scapegoat. It wasn't just at home. My sister made sure to ruin things for me outside the house too. She spread rumors about me at school, turning friends against me before I even realized what was happening. I remember walking into the cafeteria once, and everyone at the table moved away because she'd told them I was weird or mean. I didn't even know why at the time. It was like she enjoyed watching me squirm. My teachers, my friends' parents, everyone seemed to trust her over me. She had this perfect, sweet persona that no one could see through, except me. At home, my parents worshipped her. They believed every story she told, no matter how absurd. Once, she broke a vase while dancing in the living room. She pointed at me and said, "She pushed me." I wasn't even in the room, but my parents didn't care. I got grounded for 2 weeks. This kind of thing happened so often that I stopped even trying to defend myself. What was the point? By the time I turned 18, I was done. I packed up my things and left for college, determined to build a life far away from them. I didn't cut them off completely, but I kept my distance. I'd send a polite text on birthdays or holidays, but that never went home. Not even for Christmas. It was just easier to stay away. And it worked. Without them, I finally started to thrive. I found a career I loved, made real friends, and built a life where I felt valued and respected. I stopped doubting myself every second of the day. My confidence grew, and for the first time, I felt happy. Meanwhile, my sister stayed in our hometown. She got married young, had 2 kids, a boy who's now 10 and a girl who's 8. And from what I heard through the grapevine, her life was pretty chaotic. Then, out of the blue, she reached out to me a few weeks ago. She said she wanted to reconnect, for the sake of the kids. She played it off like she just wanted her kids to know their aunt, but I was skeptical. I hadn't heard from her in years, and now she suddenly wanted to catch up. Still, I agreed to meet her. I figured it couldn't hurt to at least see my niece and nephew. Maybe I could be a positive influence in their lives, even if I had to deal with her nonsense. We met at a cafe, and the kids were adorable. They were so full of energy and questions, asking about my job, my hobbies, and even my favorite color. But my sister dominated the conversation. She kept steering it back to our childhood, dropping little comments about how difficult I was as a kid. She laughed as she told stories about how I supposedly ruined family vacations or caused trouble at school. I didn't bother correcting her. It was clear she wasn't interested in the truth. She just wanted to make herself look good. After the meeting, something unexpected happened. The kids started asking to see me again, without their mom. At first, she made excuses, saying they were too busy with school or activities, but they were persistent. Eventually, she gave in and let me take them to the park. That's when things started to get interesting. The kids were full of questions. They asked about my childhood, repeating things their mom had told them. "Mom says you always got in trouble," my nephew said. "Is that true?" I kept my answers simple and neutral. I told them about how I loved to read and how I spent most of my time in my room because I liked the quiet. They seemed surprised. I could tell they were starting to notice the gaps in their mom's stories. Over the next few weeks, I spent more time with them. We went to the zoo, played board games, and baked cookies at my place. They started to open up, telling me little things about their home life. It was clear they adored their mom, but they were also starting to see her flaws. My niece, especially, seemed curious about the differences between what her mom said and what she was seeing for herself. Meanwhile, my sister's attitude started to shift. She went from being overly friendly to cold and suspicious. She started limiting how often I could see the kids, coming up with excuses about why they couldn't come over. It was obvious she felt threatened. I didn't push back, but I could tell this was only the beginning. The kids were smart, and they were starting to see the cracks in her perfect facade. All I had to do was wait. Update 1. After the initial park trip with my niece and nephew, things began to snowball. I started spending more time with them, movie nights, trips to the library, and even a visit to a local science museum. They loved it, and honestly, so did I. It was refreshing to see how curious and bright they were. They'd run ahead at exhibits, pointing things out to each other, and then turning to me with wide eyes, wanting to know more. But with every outing, the questions about my childhood kept coming up. It started small, innocent, really. My nephew asked if it was true that I once got expelled from school for starting a fight. I nearly laughed because that never happened. I told him calmly that I'd never been expelled and that I actually loved school, especially reading. He looked confused but didn't push it. The next time it was my niece. She asked if I was the one who broke Grandma's old clock when I was little. I told her I wasn't, and that I actually remembered the clock breaking when my sister and I were roughhousing in the living room. My niece blinked at me and said, "Mom said you smashed it because you were mad." I didn't argue, just shrugged and said, "That's not how I remember it." I could see her filing that information away in her mind. As we spent more time together, the questions got deeper. They started asking about their mom's childhood. My nephew asked if their mom was as straight a student like she claimed. I told him she did well in some subjects but struggled in others, just like most kids. My niece asked why their mom said I always got in trouble, but my teachers loved me. I told her I was a pretty quiet kid who stayed out of trouble because I didn't like attention. Each time, I kept my answers simple and truthful without adding too much detail. The cracks were forming. I could tell they were starting to notice that some of their mom's stories didn't line up. It wasn't long before the kids started asking their mom directly about things. My nephew mentioned our trip to the museum and asked why she'd never told him that I loved learning about science when I was a kid. My sister brushed him off, but I could see the tension building in her face when I dropped them off that day. Then came the family heirloom incident. My sister had always claimed I broke a delicate porcelain figurine that used to sit on my grandmother's shelf. I hadn't thought about it in years until my niece brought it up during one of our outings. I realized I had a photo of that figurine, intact, on my shelf in my old childhood room, years after I was supposedly blamed for breaking it. That weekend, I printed out the photo and kept it handy. Sure enough, during a family dinner, the kids brought up the figurine again. My niece, ever the curious one, asked her mom how I broke it if the photo showed it still intact when I was older. My sister went quiet, clearly caught off guard. My parents quickly chimed in, saying it didn't matter and that it was a long time ago. But the damage was done, my niece wasn't buying it, and my nephew looked downright suspicious. That dinner was a disaster. The kids kept asking questions, not just about the figurine but about other stories their mom had told them. Each time, my sister got more flustered. At one point, she snapped at my niece, telling her to stop interrogating her. My parents stepped in to defend her, of course, but the kids weren't letting it go. Afterward, my sister pulled me aside and accused me of brainwashing her children. She said I was turning them against her and making her look bad. I told her I hadn't said anything to the kids that wasn't true. She didn't believe me, of course, and stormed off, muttering about how she'd fix this. The next time I saw the kids, they were quieter than usual. I asked if everything was okay, and my nephew said their mom had been acting weird lately, snapping at them for little things and grounding them when they asked questions. My niece whispered that their mom told them they couldn't see me anymore if they kept asking about the past. That broke my heart, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I told them we could talk about anything they wanted whenever they were ready. Over the next week, things escalated. My sister started limiting how often I could see the kids. She claimed they were busy with schoolwork, even though I knew they had free time. When I did see them, they were more defiant toward their mom. My nephew even told her outright that he didn't believe some of her stories anymore. That set her off, and she grounded him for disrespecting her. The turning point came when my niece found an old family album in the attic. She brought it to me during one of our outings, pointing out pictures that didn't match the stories her mom had told her. There was a photo of me winning a spelling bee, even though her mom always claimed I hated school and never achieved anything. Another showed the figurine, still intact, long after I was supposedly blamed for breaking it. The kids were starting to see the truth, and my sister knew it. At the next family gathering, she lost her temper completely. She accused me of trying to steal her children and claimed I was poisoning them against her. My parents, predictably, took her side, telling me to stop causing trouble. But the kids, they stuck close to me, quietly watching as their mom unraveled. I realized then that this was just the beginning. My sister's lies were catching up to her, and she wasn't handling it well. The kids were seeing her for who she really was, and there was no going back. Update 2. Not long after the family dinner disaster, my phone buzzed with a notification. My sister had sent a long, rambling message in our family group chat. She accused me of manipulating her kids, twisting their minds against her, and trying to ruin her family. It was a wild rant, filled with dramatic claims about how I'd always been jealous of her, and how I was now taking it out on her children. I expected silence from the group, but to my surprise, a few of my extended relatives jumped in to comment. My aunt mentioned how my sister had always been a little over the top with her stories. A cousin chimed in, recalling how my sister exaggerated something about him years ago. The tone shifted, and the group chat turned into a subtle critique of my sister's behavior. I didn't engage, I just watched it unfold. My parents, predictably, stayed silent. Meanwhile, the kids were relentless. They started asking my parents, their grandparents, questions about our childhood. My nephew asked if I had really been a troublemaker, like his mom claimed. My parents gave vague answers, but the kids didn't let up. They poked holes in the stories their mom had told them, pointing out inconsistencies based on the things I'd shared. My niece, ever the detective, asked why their mom never had proof of the things she blamed me for. My parents, clearly uncomfortable, started avoiding the subject altogether. Around this time, I decided to share some of the old family photos and letters I had saved. I printed a few for the kids, showing moments from our childhood that didn't fit the narrative their mom had spun. There was a picture of me holding a certificate for perfect attendance, something she once told the kids was impossible because I never took school seriously. Another showed the family on a camping trip where she claimed I'd ruined everything by throwing a tantrum. In the photo, I was happily roasting marshmallows while she sulked in the background. The kids took these photos home, and apparently it caused chaos. My nephew asked their mom why she'd lied about the camping trip, and when she tried to spin another story, he refused to believe her. My niece backed him up, pointing out that the photos didn't match what she'd said. That night, I got a text from my sister, furious that I'd given the kids ammunition to use against her. She claimed I was undermining her authority and that I had no right to involve myself in her parenting. Her response was to double down. She grounded the kids, took away their devices, and told them they couldn't see me anymore. But instead of falling in line, the kids grew more rebellious. My nephew snuck his tablet late at night to text me, asking if we could still meet up soon. My niece started keeping a small notebook where she wrote down things her mom said that didn't add up. They were determined to get to the truth, even if it meant disobeying her. Things reached a boiling point when the school got involved. Their teachers noticed the kids were distracted and withdrawn, and during a parent-teacher meeting, the tension at home came up. My sister tried to brush it off, blaming it on teen angst, but the teachers weren't convinced. They mentioned the change in behavior and offered resources for the kids to talk to a counselor. The kids, however, didn't wait for permission. They started talking to me more about their schoolwork, asking for help on projects and assignments. I offered to help them research and even proofread their essays. This gave us more time to bond, and it was clear they felt safe confiding in me. At the same time, my sister's isolation was growing. Other family members, tired of her drama, started keeping their distance. My aunt stopped inviting her to gatherings, and a cousin refused to babysit for her anymore. The group chat went quiet whenever she tried to bring up new grievances. Then came the critical moment. My niece, bold as ever, asked her mom point blank why she lied about me being a troublemaker. She said, if Auntie was so bad, why are you the only one who remembers it that way? My sister lost it. She yelled, blamed me for brainwashing them, and even started crying. The kids were shaken, but they didn't back down. My nephew told her, we just want the truth. The meltdown didn't stop there. At a public event, a school fundraiser, she lashed out at me in front of other parents, accusing me of ruining her family. It was loud enough to draw stares, and a few of the other parents quietly pulled me aside later to ask if everything was okay. One even mentioned that my sister had always seemed a bit intense and offered to help if I needed anything. The kids were beginning to see her behavior for what it was, manipulative and controlling. My niece told me she didn't trust her mom anymore because she only cares about being right. My nephew said he felt like he couldn't talk to her without it turning into an argument. That's when I knew I had to step in. It wasn't just about the lies anymore, it was about protecting them from the emotional damage her behavior was causing. I started documenting everything. The texts, the photos, even the incidents the kids described to me. I didn't know what my next move would be, but I was preparing for whatever came next. This wasn't the end. My sister wasn't going to back down, and I could feel the storm brewing. But the kids were on my side, and for the first time, I felt like we had a chance to change things for the better. Update 3. Not long after my sister's meltdown at the school fundraiser, things escalated in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. She started with a legal threat. One morning, I got a letter from a lawyer claiming she was planning to sue me for alienation of affection, accusing me of interfering in her relationship with her kids. At first, I wasn't sure what to make of it, but after consulting with my own lawyer, I learned she didn't have a case. The concept of alienation of affection wasn't even applicable in this context, and the letter was more bark than bite. My lawyer assured me that it was just a scare tactic. When the legal threats didn't work, she launched a smear campaign. Small-town rumors spread fast, and suddenly people I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out to ask if I'd really been trying to steal my sister's kids. She told anyone who would listen that I was poisoning their minds, turning them against her, and even trying to take custody. It didn't take long for the kids to catch wind of what she was saying. My nephew confronted her about it, asking why she couldn't just let them spend time with me. That confrontation ended with him being grounded again. But the kids weren't backing down. They refused to play along with her narrative. When she tried to make them repeat her lies to their grandparents, they refused. My niece, ever sharp, told her, we're not saying things that aren't true. My sister's frustration was obvious, and it only made her more desperate. The school got involved again, this time more seriously. Their teachers noticed the tension affecting their performance and behavior. The kids weren't failing, but their grades had slipped, and they seemed distracted in class. The school counselor stepped in, offering one-on-one sessions with both kids. My sister was furious when she found out but had little choice in the matter. The kids took to these sessions quickly, opening up about the turmoil at home. During this time, I started to notice a shift in the support around me. My extended family, who had largely stayed neutral up to this point, began stepping in. My aunt invited me over for coffee and said she believed me. A cousin offered financial help if things got worse. Even some neighbors, who had heard the rumors, started to reach out, offering kind words and support. It seemed like the facade my sister had carefully built over the years was beginning to crack. Her next move was as desperate as it was transparent. She tried to bribe the kids. She promised my nephew a new gaming console if he would stop asking to see me, and offered my niece a shopping spree if she would stay on mom's side. The kids weren't buying it. My niece flat out told her that she didn't want stuff if it came with lies. My nephew quietly declined the console, saying he'd rather spend time with me. The breaking point came at a family gathering. It was a birthday party for one of our younger cousins, and my sister showed up with the kids in tow. She must have been hoping for a chance to publicly humiliate me because she wasted no time starting an argument. In front of everyone, she accused me of trying to destroy her family and claimed I was manipulating her children for my own gain. I didn't engage. Instead, I calmly addressed each of her claims with facts. I mentioned the photos, the kids' questions, and even her own public outbursts. By the time I finished, the room was silent. My sister, clearly out of control, stormed out, dragging the kids with her. But the damage was done. Everyone in that room had seen her unravel. The fallout was immediate. My parents, who had always taken her side, stayed quiet. They didn't defend her, but they didn't come to her aid either. Extended family members, fed up with her antics, started distancing themselves. Some even stopped inviting her to events altogether. The kids, meanwhile, made their loyalty clear. They told me outright that they trusted me more than their mom, and they wanted to spend more time with me. Even the community began to notice. Neighbors and friends who had heard her wild accusations started showing their support. They offered to vouch for me if things escalated legally and even brought up incidents from the past where they'd seen her exaggerate or lie. It felt like the tide was turning. But my sister wasn't done. She grew more isolated, both socially and emotionally, which only made her behavior worse. She began lashing out at anyone who questioned her, losing more friends in the process. At this point, I knew I had to take steps to protect the kids. I started consulting with a family lawyer about what legal options I had. I didn't want to take custody unless it was absolutely necessary, but I needed to ensure the kids were safe from further emotional harm. Then came the final twist, a cryptic message from my sister. She sent me a text late one night, saying she had one last card to play, and that I should be prepared for what was coming. It wasn't a direct threat, but it felt ominous. I shared the text with my lawyer, who told me to keep documenting everything and be ready for anything. This isn't over. I can feel the storm brewing again, and this time I'm preparing for the worst. Whatever her last card is, I'm determined to protect my niece and nephew, no matter what. Update 4. I knew my sister's last card was coming, but I didn't expect it to land the way it did. A few days after her cryptic text, she made a dramatic announcement in the family group chat. She declared that she was moving out of state with the kids to protect them from me. According to her, I was a dangerous influence, and leaving was the only way to save her family. The fallout was immediate. The kids were devastated. My nephew, who had a school project due, couldn't believe he'd have to leave before presenting it. My niece started crying, saying she didn't want to leave her friends or me. They begged her to reconsider, but she wouldn't hear it. In a moment that stunned everyone, my niece looked her straight in the eye and asked if they could live with me instead. That, of course, set her off. She turned to the group chat again, accusing me of brainwashing them into thinking I was some kind of savior. She claimed I was trying to take custody of her kids and warned the family to stay out of her way. The tension was unbearable, but I stayed quiet, knowing I needed a better plan than arguing in a group text. The kids, however, weren't staying quiet. Without their mom knowing, they started recording her outbursts. These weren't small arguments, they were full-blown tirades where she yelled, insulted them, and blamed me for everything wrong in her life. The recordings were heartbreaking but also vital evidence. My niece handed me the recordings during one of our secret meetups, asking if they could help stop the move. I shared the recordings with my lawyer, who agreed they were significant. Combined with the history of escalating behavior, we decided to move forward with filing for emergency custody. But first, we needed to bolster the case. Then came an unexpected twist. My sister, in her desperation to ruin my reputation, used her work email to send defamatory messages about me to mutual acquaintances. I wouldn't have known if one of her coworkers hadn't reached out, shocked by her behavior. Her employer got wind of it and issued her a formal warning. She tried to downplay it, but it was clear her frustration and paranoia were starting to cost her professionally. Meanwhile, extended family members decided enough was enough. My aunt organized a family meeting to confront my sister about her behavior. It was supposed to be an intervention, but my sister walked in ready for a fight. As soon as the discussion started, she accused everyone of turning against her, calling me the ringleader. When my cousin mentioned the recordings, she completely lost it, screaming that I was poisoning her children and that everyone in the room was enabling me. Her public meltdown solidified what most people in the room already suspected. She was in the wrong. Family members who had previously stayed neutral began offering me their full support. After the meeting, my cousin pulled me aside to say she'd testify on my behalf if needed. The tide was clearly turning. The kids weren't done either. They wrote letters to their school counselor, describing their mom's behavior and the stress it was causing them. My nephew wrote about how he felt like he couldn't speak his mind without being punished, and my niece detailed how she was scared to talk to her mom because it always led to yelling. These letters, combined with the recordings, strengthened our case. When my sister caught wind of the custody filing, she tried to get ahead of it. She made a false report to Child Protective Services, claiming I was abusive and had a history of violence. CPS launched an investigation, and while it was invasive and frustrating, it ultimately cleared me of any wrongdoing. Instead, their attention shifted to her. The recordings, letters, and reports from the school counselor painted a clear picture of a toxic environment for the kids. CPS raised serious concerns about her ability to provide a safe and stable home. They noted her outbursts, manipulative behavior, and the emotional harm she was causing. My lawyer submitted all this evidence as part of the custody filing, and the court scheduled an emergency hearing. My sister's retaliation wasn't over. She started reaching out to mutual friends, begging for character references, and trying to spin the narrative back in her favor. But by this point, most people saw through her. Her desperation was alienating more people than it was helping, and her once loyal support system was dwindling fast. Now we're in a waiting game. The court date is set, and tensions are at an all-time high. The kids are hopeful but nervous, and I'm doing everything I can to reassure them that no matter what happens, I'll fight for them. My sister, meanwhile, has gone quiet, too quiet. I don't know what her next move will be, but I'm bracing for impact. Whatever happens, I'm ready to see this through. The kids deserve better, and I won't let her last card win. Update 5. The day of the emergency custody hearing finally arrived, and tensions were high. My lawyer and I had prepared every piece of evidence, recordings, letters, and testimonies from teachers and family members. As I walked into the courthouse, I saw my sister sitting with her lawyer. She looked composed on the surface, but the way she fidgeted with her papers told a different story. The hearing began with both sides presenting their case. My sister's lawyer started by painting me as a manipulative outsider who had overstepped boundaries and turned her children against her. They leaned heavily on the false CPS report, claiming it as evidence of my alleged unstable influence. But when it came time to back those claims, they had nothing solid. The CPS investigation had already cleared me, and my lawyer made sure to remind the court of that. Then it was our turn. My lawyer presented the recordings of her tirades, the kids' letters to their school counselor, and the testimonies we'd gathered. Each piece painted a consistent picture of a toxic environment at home, one that was affecting the kids' emotional well-being. The judge listened carefully, taking notes as the evidence was presented. The pivotal moment came when the judge allowed my niece and nephew to speak privately with her. I wasn't in the room, but according to my lawyer, they were clear and articulate about their feelings. They shared that they loved their mom but felt scared and unsupported at home. They said they felt safe and happy when they were with me and wanted to stay. It was hard to hear that they'd been put in this position, but their courage was undeniable. When we returned to the courtroom, my sister's composure began to slip. Her lawyer tried to recover by attacking my character, but my lawyer quickly shut it down, pointing out inconsistencies in her claims. Things went downhill fast for her when one of the teachers testified. The teacher described how the kids had confided in her about their struggles at home and how their performance in school had improved when they started spending more time with me. Other witnesses followed. A neighbor talked about overhearing my sister yelling at the kids during late-night arguments. An extended family member spoke about how my sister's behavior at the family intervention had alarmed them. By the time my lawyer rested our case, the room felt heavy with the weight of the truth. My sister was given a chance to respond, but her erratic behavior during the proceedings sealed her fate. She interrupted repeatedly, snapping at the judge and making wild accusations that were easily disproven. At one point, her lawyer had to physically nudge her to calm down. It was clear to everyone in the room that her actions were doing more harm than good. Judgment Day came quickly. The judge granted me temporary custody, citing the kids' best interests and the evidence of emotional harm in their current home. There would be a review in 6 months to determine if the arrangement should become permanent. My sister stormed out of the courtroom, shouting that this wasn't over and vowing to make everyone pay. The transition period was challenging but rewarding. The kids moved in with me the following week, and we began building a new routine together. At first, they were cautious, unsure of what life without their mom's constant oversight would feel like. But within weeks, I saw changes in them. My nephew became more outgoing, joining a school club and making new friends. My niece started excelling in her classes, even earning praise from her teacher for her creative writing. Meanwhile, my sister's decline continued. She tried to appeal the custody decision but failed due to lack of evidence. Her behavior grew more erratic, and she began alienating even the few people who had stood by her. I heard from mutual acquaintances that she'd lost her job after another incident involving inappropriate emails sent from her work account. It was sad to see her spiral, but my focus remained on the kids. My parents, predictably, stayed silent throughout the whole ordeal. They neither supported me nor openly sided with my sister. It was frustrating but not surprising. At this point, I wasn't expecting much from them. What mattered was the kids' well-being, and they were thriving in their new environment. As the 6-month review approached, I sat down with the kids to talk about what they wanted. My niece was the first to speak. She said she didn't want to go back to living with her mom, at least not until things changed. My nephew agreed, saying he felt safe and happy with me. They both expressed their love for their mom but said they couldn't go back to the way things were. The review hearing was a formality at this point. The judge took into account the kids' wishes, the evidence of their progress, and my ability to provide a stable home. Full custody was awarded to me, with supervised visitation granted to my sister. The decision was bittersweet, but it was the right one for the kids. In the months that followed, we settled into our new normal. The kids blossomed in ways I hadn't imagined. My niece took up painting, filling the house with colorful artwork. My nephew joined the soccer team and started dreaming of playing professionally one day. Watching them thrive made everything worth it. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far we've come. My childhood was filled with pain and doubt, but it led me here, to a place where I can break the cycle and give my niece and nephew the love and stability they deserve. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: we're in this together, and that's all that matters.